So moving on to the next step, engaging. You can think of this as the outreach step or the email sequencing step of getting in touch. There's some similarities for AEs and SWEs here. We'll want to personalize the outreach. Multi-step campaigns will work in every case, and you'll want to distribute that outreach across multiple channels. So think emails plus LinkedIn steps, plus if you have a different way of getting in touch, like a Twitter DM, can make a big impact as well. Some things that are more unique to each of the roles. On the AE side, you can focus on pitching the trajectory. Many times AEs have a very rigid promotion cycle, especially in large orgs. Being at a smaller company will give them a faster path to advancing, be that through promotions to focusing on enterprise sales, or at some point even managing a sales team. It also presents an opportunity for them to get into a leadership role in the long term. And so, for example, for candidates who really want to become a VP sales down the road, they might have an advantage by betting on a startup and accelerating their career path that way too. At the same time, AEs who join companies that work out well oftentimes end up having very strong comp packages because the sales are going well, they're driving that, they own the majority of the pipeline, and they have a consistent percentage quota. That's a really good thing for your company. It might feel like you're overpaying, especially if things are going well, but it's a great signal to attract even more good AEs. They should be making a lot of money if your company is succeeding. Now, on the engineering side, we want to highlight the ownership and challenges that they might be tackling in your role. Oftentimes, great engineers are excited by that. They want to work on really hard problems, and they're able to do that at a startup where they can almost choose the problems that they will be working on. They'll also be in a very autonomous and small culture or small team, which drives that culture. It really matters that the founder, ideally the technical founder, is going to be reaching out for those sweet hires. For example, at Juicebox, Ishan, our CTO, does all of our software engineering outreach. Now, what does that actually look like for an email? In this slide, we'll see a few example points of what makes an email compelling. Some basic things like adding variables for the first name, maybe their current company. You want to establish legitimacy for your company. So this is a little bit like selling. Why is your company a great place to work? What customers do you have? Do you have momentum in the business? Has it been growing fast? If you have a funding announcement that you've recently had or any other news article that talks about the company, that's a great place to include this. Despite those different points, you'll want to keep it somewhat short. Most candidates are going to read this on their phone. They're quickly going to skim through it, and there should be a few things that catch their attention, at least enough to be able to give a quick response or book a call with you if you include your Calendly link. Now, in the follow-up email, we'll want to add some additional value. And so in this case, that's in the third paragraph. It's another reason why this role is special, why they'll be able to have an impact in that role and why they should apply. We'll also notice some previous things like relinking the job description, making it really easy for them to book. In this case, also including a call to action and giving them a way out of saying, hey, it's not the right time for me. Now we'll flip over to reaching out using a different channel. Oftentimes, LinkedIn messaging or LinkedIn connection requests are going to be your best bet. In this case, it's intentionally the third step because the first two steps are automated, emailing and follow-up emails, while LinkedIn steps won't be automated. You'll have to be doing those manually to comply with LinkedIn's terms. Oftentimes that means a quick connection request, maybe following up on the previous messages you sent, and again, including a booking link or a call to action. And we can see what that looks like on Juicebox. Juicebox will give you a reminder to send that outreach request so that you keep your email sequence on track, but you also do the manual steps that you or your co-founder will complete. Now, after you've done those two emails and the LinkedIn message, you'll want to circle back with at least one final email. We have some customers who do like 8 email sequence steps, so it's really up to you how many you want to do. They can relink back to the JD. They might even mention to the fact that you reached out to them on LinkedIn, or you can do things like saying, my co-founder came across your profile again, or I just thought of another reason that this role could be a good fit for you, or noticed something in your background. The more personalized you make this, even if that means individually going in and customizing each of those emails, will have a big impact, especially at that final step. With that, we'll see a quick snapshot of what that looks like in Juicebox too, as you manage your email campaigns. So let's take a look at some metrics, what these look like. This is a real screenshot of Juicebox outreach metrics. We'll see AEs, SWEs, community and events managers, and a customer success manager role in here. And the kind of main metric I'd look at is the middle column, the third one, where you can see the reply rate. And so this was before Series A announcement. Juicebox had not had any funding public at that time. I think we're around 10 to 15 team members when we were sending these campaigns, and with response rates between 10 and 18%, depending on the role. In this case, the SWE sequence had the lowest response rate, around 11%, which is roughly what we'd expect because it's also the most competitive role. Now, overall, if your sequences are in that 10 to 20% range, you're doing good. It could still be better. We have some customers who get 40+% response rates. Oftentimes that's because they have a good brand, but other times it's because they do a really compelling job of writing specific email outreach and personalizing that to the candidates that they're reaching out to. Now, the second metric is whether those candidates are actually interested in your role. And so even if you get a 15% reply rate, only roughly half of them, maybe a little bit more, are likely going to be interested in your role. And so your target there should be that your response rate is roughly half of your interested rate. If your response rate overall is going up, but your interested rate is staying steady, that's probably a sign that something that you're doing in the email messaging is getting people to say something, but that could also be things like stop emailing me or please unsubscribe. And so reply rate alone shouldn't be the golden standard. Rather, it's the interested rate that you get beyond the reply rate. Going back to these example campaigns, for the AEs, we have a 9% interested rate, SWEs 7%, and then up to 11% for the community and events manager role. So how do you actually make this a priority? Oftentimes when I chat with founders and we kind of go through some different tips of doing your sourcing and outreach, everything makes sense, people are aligned, but then they don't actually do it in the following weeks. There's a lot of things that are going on. There's a lot of things that are going to seem more important, especially if you're also working with external agencies where you'll also be getting candidate pipeline. What we found to be really helpful there is just setting a schedule for yourself and making a commitment. Let's say we want to schedule 100 emails every week that will be spread out throughout the week. You can do that on a weekend day. I personally do these on Sunday evenings, get ready for the week, know who I'm reaching out to, and then it kind of flows autonomously for me from there. You can even do it multiple weeks in advance once you're calibrated on your roles and you know kind of what type of outreach you'll be doing. Your goal should be to speak with at least 10 candidates a week. You can either do those all in one day or spread those out a little bit, depending on your preference. If you're not getting to 10 interviews per week, it's probably a sign that you're not doing enough outreach. And so you can scale that outreach up, think 150 emails, 200 emails per week, etc. And then finally, every founder should be involved in this process. It's tempting to say, oh, one founder is going to lead the charge on hiring. It becomes really difficult because it also means that not every founder is giving that same input or calibration into the hiring process. And so especially with those early hires, going back to what we talked about in the very beginning, it shapes the culture. It should be that something that every founder is involved in and cares about to do that initial outreach. Quick hack there, especially if you have, say, a founder who's doing sales or has a particularly booked calendar,